It was honestly the most thrilling, dramatic fight I have ever witnessed live. It was like the energy in the arena. You know, we had 9,000 in there, 9,500 sold out, 3,500 Irish, Nottingham.
Happy Monday, fight fans. This is the DAZN Boxing Show. I go by the name of Hot.
And I'm Barack the Boxing Bully.
Our guy, Mr. Matchroom Eddie Hearn, he'll be joining us today. There's so much to talk about. Or is there so much to talk about? Shouldn't there be just one fight to talk about that happened this weekend? I mean, people were saying fight of the year, Barack. I have more to say. I'm going to go further, but I'll wait for the opening bell. Let's go.
This past weekend, DAZN had a Fight of the Year candidate as Leigh Wood shocked us all with a 12-round knockout of Michael Conlan to retain the WBA regular world featherweight title. It was a vicious KO that sent Conlan out of the ring, crashing onto the floor, which forced referee Steve Gray to stop the fight. We're so quick to say Fight of the Year, but it was an incredible, epic fight. Maybe the heavyweight fight with Luis Ortiz and who was that? Charles Martin. That was 4 knockdowns in the heavyweight division. That's always exciting, but this one right here, compelling all the way to the last second. What do you think?
First off, I'm not one of those guys that jump the gun to say fight of the year, especially early in the year. I never like when they do that early in the first couple of months, first quarter, when there's so much year left. So, good fight of the year. Good fight of the year. So far. Like, wait till September, October, and start saying stuff like that. But in this case, in this particular case, I'm looking past the fight of the year, Barack. I'm looking at 2 or 3 other fights that might be ahead of this. And you're talking about, yes, Corrales Castillo, yes, Ward Gotti won. But this fight is right beneath that. And,
Word? You're comparing
depending...
this fight to that? To those?
I'm saying it's creeping up right under those fights. And depending on who you like, what rounds you like, maybe some people will have it right there next to those fights. The fight had drama earlier on. Conlan putting them down. I mean, the drama throughout the fight and it ending in the 12th round after both warriors battled all of those rounds. If a fight keeps you at the edge of the seat the entire fight, Barack, it's memorable. It's one of those fights that you and I, years down the line, we're going to go back to it. Right now, it hasn't sunk in yet. But this fight will be talked about for years to come. So yes, I'm going to put it right underneath those legendary fights.
Wow. I mean, yes, it's definitely probably going to be in the runnings for Fight of the Year, no matter what happens in the sport.
How about this? Before you move on, I'm going to predict this being a Fight of the Year, regardless of what happens from now on to December.
You just beat now, this right here is the limb. Now you usually say go out on a limb, and it ain't really going out.
I'm on a limb on my tippy toe.
This is a real shaky limb. Nah, this is pretty good. I could get you saying that because it was compelling. I think maybe if it was a couple of more knockdowns, then maybe we can probably compare it to those. Because even that 11th round knockdown of Conlan got up so quickly, and I'm saying he slipped. He did have a slip in motion, but he did get caught right before that foot slipped out, so it might have been the punch. Yeah, it was a great fight. I don't want to sit here and try and compare it to other great fights. I just thought individually that was an incredible fight. Conlan showed early that he had power, dropped Leigh Wood in the first round, but if it wasn't at the bell, Steve Gray, you never know. Maybe he would have stopped it, because even after Wood got up, he was still a little wobbly, even after 8 count. But Steve Gray, being a good ref, he said, you got a whole minute. You got a whole minute to recover. Go sit down. So imagine if that was 20, 30 seconds earlier. But that's the fight game. That's how it happens. And you got to understand something, that these guys are both warriors. Leigh Wood never gave up. I always have to commend the guys who never give up. Down on the scorecards, but it's still a very, very close fight, because in reality, if if Lee Wood would have won that last round, then it would have been a draw. And all Conlan needed to win was on 2 judges' scorecards that last round. So that's how close this fight was. And if you look at it, Lee Wood actually started that whole sequence before he put Conlan on the ropes in the last round in a left-handed stance.
Oh,
so
he did win that. He did win that last round and the fight in that round.
He was winning that last round. So the fight would have been a draw unless somebody would have scored it a 10-8. You know, but listen, that was incredible. This is where you can tip your hat to both fighters. Sometimes we give props to both fighters just because we feel bad for the loser. The loser showed he's an amazing fighter, and I just want to see a rematch.
And more importantly, Barack, people were worried about Conlan because of the way he went down. And he felt literally outside the ring and went to the hospital, got some CT scans, but he's all clear, head is all clear. So, you know, these guys embraced and hugged after. And, you know, Conlan put out a little video saying he'll be back. And on social media said, let's run it back.
Does he deserve a rematch? I think.
Absolutely. You know, the fight ended in the 12th round, Barack. And like you said, the fight could have been a draw. So that alone is a testament of how competitive the fight was. But I was concerned after the knockout. I'm glad he's okay physically, live to fight another day. There's no way any of those dudes should fight anybody else next except each other.
Man, I can't agree more. I also think this is a win for Ben Davison, who gets a lot of negative talk on social media. I think we need to give the young guy a chance to be great, you know. But anyway, if you want more on this incredible fight, go to DAZN News because they have you covered. And up next is Matchroom's head man, Eddie Hearn.
We're doing, gentlemen.
Good, man. Still high off of this phenomenal fight that we saw on Saturday night. You know, I was telling Barack, first off, you know, I know we're going to get an Eddie exclusive today, so I want to put that in your head now so you can start brainstorming. But often when we see a good fight, we right away say, oh, potential fight of the year. I don't like to hear that earlier on in the year, you know, when there's so much year left ahead of us. But I was telling Barack, in this particular case, I'm seeing beyond fight of the year. This is one of those legendary fights that is going to be right under the Castillo, Corrales, the Ward, Gotti ones. And I'm not afraid to say that. That's how spectacular this fight was.
Yeah, whenever you refer to those fights, you know, that's something that you're right. You know, when those fights happen, 2 or 3 days after those fights, people weren't expecting that necessarily people would be talking about them 20 and 30 years on. That's really the sort of the blue tick in terms of a great fight, one that's remembered for years and years. You're quite right about fight of the year, because I finished the fight and I was like, that's 100% fight of the year. And I was like, oh, March, you know. So we'll have to see. But it was honestly the most thrilling, dramatic fight I've ever witnessed live. It was like the energy in the arena. You know, we had 9,000 in there, 9,500 sold out, 3,500 Irish, you know, Nottingham, and just the drama. Like, you know, Lee Wood comes out, starts well in the first round, gets dropped from a beautiful left hand from Michael Conlan. How he got up, saved by the bell, really.
Saved by the
2 or 3 rounds, just survived. You know, took everything, took the kitchen sink, middle stages. Conlan's bodywork was unbelievable. He was brilliant, by the way, Michael Conlan. And then just like in the 8th and 9th, I just felt, you know what, like this Lee Wood, because he punches so hard, Lee Wood, you know, for a featherweight. But then, you know, the 11th, was it a slip? Was it a knockdown? Irrelevant. And it was just like, I had Michael Conlan's brother next to me and his dad in the seat beyond. And we were like friendly banter back the whole fight. And I just kept saying, he's not out of it. He's not out of it. And going into the 12th round, Ben Davison actually at the start of the 11th round said to me, what do you think? And I said, he has to knock him out to win. I didn't realize actually, you know, he was up by 1, up by 3 going into the last Conlan. I thought it was 2 or 3 was right for me, you know, with the knockdown.
Yes.
And like the 12th round, I just stood up as he come off the stool and said, you have to knock him out. You've got to knock this guy out now. Like, but in my heart of hearts, if you'd have said to me, do you think Lee Wood can now come back after what he's soaked up in this fight and knock out Michael Conlan in the 12th round, I would have to say that is something that only dreams are made of.
Right.
You know, and it the way that it happened, you know, thank God he's okay, but fell out, you know, he's unconscious from the right hand and then fell out of the ropes. His security and his family, you know, caught him, and thankfully the British Boxing Board of Control did a fantastic job. But, you know, we never really got the chance to celebrate because everyone was so concerned for Michael. So, but thankfully he's okay, and we can look back on just a thriller, an absolute thriller. And I think boxing needed it, to be honest with you. You know, you saw the event a few weeks ago with Taylor and Catterall, left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. This was one that I think fight fans saw and went, this is why we love the sport of boxing.
Right. The only reason why I knew Wood was still dangerous is because he's always knocking somebody out in the later rounds. The last fight he had was another 12-round stoppage. The last 5 knockouts were all 9 and above, 9th round and above. And plus, for some reason, Colin chose to slug in there with him, to trade with
amazing.
him in the 11th round, in the 12th round. And I'm like,
apparently he was told by his corner, you need a stoppage win.
What?
You know,
what?
Yeah, apparently that's what I've seen a quote from Michael Conlan saying that I was told that I needed to, you know, because I was surprised by the way he fought in the 12th round.
Yeah.
You know, what he really needed to do in 11 and 12 was just box and move. He had the fight won at the start of the 11th round.
Right, he had it.
But, you know,
I guess he'll be firing his trainer.
well, you know, I mean, we'll see. I would say, although, you know, it was Matchroom v Top Rank, which was always sweet. I would say that Michael Conlan boxed brilliantly. I thought he was fantastic. I mean, he took a lot of punishment himself.
Yeah.
You know, his body work was brilliant. His defense was brilliant. And it was a weird one because he soaked up a lot of pressure. And I actually think the culmination of like 9, 10, 11 just sort of soaked it out of him. And then because the knockout, it was a beautiful right hand, you know, straight on the temple, but it wasn't a shot that, you know, he may have taken bigger shots during the fight, but I think it was just the pressure and the fatigue and everything got to him, and it was a thrilling conclusion.
I want to talk about a fight, shifting gears a little bit, that for a moment I'm watching the press and I'm getting concerned, and I'm talking about the Demetrius Bivol and Canelo Alvarez, with the Klitschko brothers, you know, putting it out there that, hey, this fight needs to be canceled. Demetrius Bivol needs to be pulled from this fight, considering all that's going on in Russia and the Ukraine. Give me your take on what those brothers said, and is this fight in jeopardy because of that?
I think it's a very difficult debate to have, really. I mean, it's hard when you know Dimitri Bivol, and you know, I thought he spoke really well at the press conference with his desire for peace, and you know, he's a very peaceful individual. His mum's from Moldova, his dad's from Korea. He was born in Dagestan, but has resided in Russia. So it's like, I mean, in the NHL, it's full of Russian talent, you know, playing. At the UFC at the weekend, I think they had 2 Russian fighters in the main event. It's very hard on individuals. I understand both sides of the argument, but it's very hard, I feel, to almost have an individual sanction for an individual that has no support of what is happening. He's based in America, you know, I don't know. And again, it's hard for me because I know what Dimitri Bivol has given to this sport. I don't feel like this opportunity should be taken away from him, quite frankly.
You said Matchroom beat Top Rank. Now, Bob Arum is saying, hey, well, this is not like, because, you know, he has a fight that's not in jeopardy, but people could bring it up, and that's Beterbiev versus Joe Smith sometime in June in Madison Square Garden. You know, he's a Russian fighter as well, Beterbiev, but he's saying that he has a Canada passport. He's lived in Canada for years, but he's actually Russian, and Bivol wasn't born in Russia. So he's comparing
Bob's gonna say whatever's gonna suit Bob, basically. I mean, I wouldn't take too much notice of that, but at the end of the day, there's, you know, like I say, Bivol has lived in Russia. Yes, of course he is. Yes, we know his mum's from Moldova, his dad's there. He wasn't born there. Right. Then you've got Beterbiev, who was born in Russia,
yes,
but does live in Canada. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, you can debate it. It's difficult when you have a personal relationship with someone who, you know, like I said, Dimitri Bivol has made it clear of his position in terms of his desire for peace. He you know, he's worked his whole life for this opportunity. I don't feel that someone like him in his position with his background should be penalised for these acts. But again, like, honestly, it's a debate I'm quite uncomfortable with because you just can't win.
Yeah.
You know, I understand the arguments from the other side, but at the same time, you know, there are already things in place that have been put in place and will be put in place by us, the WBA. No flags, no anthems, you know, all these individual sanctions. And there are additional sanctions from us as a business about operating in Russia, which we will not be participating in this time being with TV rights or commercial activity. But to sanction an individual like that, I personally don't agree with.
All right, on another fight that's affected from all of this is Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk, obviously. And there's been talks about him fighting an interim fight. People are saying Deontay Wilder, and they're throwing a few other names out there. How realistic is that? Are we shifting to that? Okay, AJ's going to have to fight somebody else now. So now are you narrowing that who that opponent is going to be?
Well, I had that first conversation with Alex Krasuk Thursday, I think, or Friday, which, you know, again, that's a very uncomfortable conversation to have because right now there's a lot more on their mind than rematching Anthony Joshua. But obviously at the same time, we do need some direction because we have to plan the future of AJ. So I just said, look, our fight's supposed to take place in June. Ultimately, if it does, you're going to have to start training camp in 2 or 3 weeks. If you need more time, it's no problem. One thing we won't accept and we don't want is the opportunity of that rematch to go away. You know, AJ could have been paid a lot of money for that opportunity to go away and he wouldn't accept it. So that's the absolute priority, is the opportunity for AJ to try and win his world championship belts back. Now, if Usyk won't be ready in June, which I don't think he will be, then we would like to have an interim bout. AJ's fit, he's ready, he's ready to fight. Now, AJ's idea of an interim bout is very different to my idea of an interim bout. You know, AJ's list that he sends me is Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz and Otto Wallin and Joe Joyce. And I'm thinking, look, I know you want to have a real fight, but we are waiting. You know, this is a fight to be waiting for Usyk, not a fight that might be more dangerous than Usyk. So
we need a soft touch, AJ, a soft touch.
Basically, but he's never, honestly, you know how much I've championed his resume. He's never had a soft touch since winning a world title. So
I agree with you.
And maybe it would be detrimental to him. You know? So let's see. I mean, look,
maybe he needs a tough opponent, Eddie. I mean, maybe that would like you say. I mean, history has shown us that he doesn't like easy fights. So if it's not broken, don't fix it.
They said to me, everyone says, who do you think is most likely? And I said to him, look, if you're going to fight Usyk, I think you should fight a southpaw. You know, and I think it's preparation for that fight, and whether that's Ortiz, whether that's Wallin, whether those, you know, but I think that would make sense. So we'll have to see. Most importantly, we'll wait to hear from Alex Krasuk, which should be fairly imminent. And if they say to us, no, we're ready to go in June, we'll proceed with the Usyk fight. If they say we'd appreciate more time, we'll go in October or something like that, then we'll lock that in as well.
Yeah, Ortiz would be a great fight. He's coming off of a good win, but he also shows that he can get touched. He got dropped in the first and the fourth round. That would be a great fight for Joshua. But listen, another heavyweight fight, which is probably one of the biggest fights of the year, but one side is not saying a word. Are we going to hear anything at all from Dillian Whyte before this big fight happens?
I honestly don't think so, you know, to be honest. I mean, they're all arguing non-stop, like the lawyer, Queensbury's lawyer, and it's just, there's loads of problems, but I don't anticipate it affecting the fight. It's a feeling of disrespect. So, and you know what? People are very quick to, Dillian Whyte got stick for not turning up to the press conference. People have got very short memories that they forget that Tyson Fury didn't turn up to the Vladimir Klitschko press conference either. You know, but that seems to be forgotten about a little bit. You can check it online. It was a big story at the time. And Dillian just feels like that this was a purse bid. There's certain things I'd like, you're not giving them to me, so no problem. I'm not going to push the fight. I'm just going to stay in my camp, do my work, and I'll see you there, kind of thing. It's a big fight. They don't need the push. I mean, they sold the tickets. They obviously would like a push for the pay-per-view, but I'm sure they'll get one. But I think, there's a lot of bad blood, not even between Dillian and Tyson Fury, just between the sort of individual lawyers going backwards and forwards. It's quite funny to watch it from afar this time rather than, lose sleep over it. But Dillian's training hard and I give him a great shot in the fight.
Eddie, I want to get your opinion on this Munguia Charlo, Jamal Charlo fight. That there were talks about it, and then they put out in the press that it fell through. But Oscar's still saying he's trying to make the fight happen. Did you have any insider as to why that fight fell through?
I don't. I mean, I would guess that obviously Jaime Munguia is a very important part of the Golden Boy and DAZN relationship. You know, he's a big star. They will want to keep him on DAZN. And I would think that the request is something like a shared broadcast or some kind of way to make that happen, which I think seems fair. You know, Munguia is a big star, Charlo's a big star. But there seems to always be a reluctance from someone on that side to do that. You know, I remember with Charlo and Demetrius Andrade and you know, with Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant, it was never like, they'd never even consider letting one of their fighters go the other side of the street, yet always presume that other fighters should come over their way, you know? Yeah, so, which is fine, like, that's okay. If that's your strategy, I understand, but don't moan when a fight falls through. And I think the Munguia-Charlo fight is the perfect fight for everybody, to be honest with you. So if you're, you know, all we keep hearing from certain executives and these people is, oh yeah, DAZN. And then when you get the opportunity to share a fight on the same platform, what are you so afraid of?
Yeah.
You know, if we're the minnows, if we're really not that big players, right, if we're not really taking over the boxing world, then what's the problem?
Yeah, there should be no issue. I mean, so, look, you've talked to fighters. You have a history of chopping it up with fighters in the DM, and I know you and Jamal Charlo have. You know, you said that there was an offer made years ago for the Demetrius Andrade
$5 million, I think.
Right now, we're supposed to be chopping it up with Jamal Charlo tomorrow. If you had an opportunity to send a message to Jamal about the Andrade fight or any middleweight fight, what would it be?
Mate, there's honestly no, like, you couldn't have a sensible conversation with Jamal Charlo. Like, he lives in another world in terms of like the offers that he turned down to fight Demetrius Andrade were so baffling. And in the end, it was like, we will go to Showtime, Fox, whatever you want. Just make us an offer. Pay us the same as you paid Derevenchenko, right? And this fight's much bigger, and we'll go. Nothing at all. But you see, these guys, they don't actually know what's going on because they're not in control of their own destiny. They hear things, they get this, but you know, and they're steered away from certain things. It baffles me when I look at Charlo and particularly David Benavidez, that I think is an outstanding fighter. Like, their resumes are absolutely appalling, right? And you've got them out there shouting out Canelo Alvarez's name. And by the way, I think Alvarez against Charlo and Alvarez against Benavidez, very good fights. Like, look at David Benavidez. You've got a kid there who's in his absolute prime, and he's getting 0 big fights. And by the way, Benavidez, I don't know Charlo personally. I don't know whether he actually wants the big fights or whatever, but Benavidez does. Jose Benavidez does as well. They're crying out for the big fights. But why don't you just start matching these guys? You know, I know there's talks about Benavidez against Plant. There shouldn't be talks. So natural. You know, Charlo against Benavidez, Charlo against Plant. Make the fights. You know? But Charlo's career from 2 years ago, where he was really relevant and he was popping and he was, you know, I'm sorry, but that stock has fallen dramatically when it shouldn't have, because he's a great fighter and he's edgy. He's got a good personality. But fights and real fights, I mean, like, and now you have an opportunity with Munguia, but don't let the fight, you know, some people blame, I saw some people having a go at Joe Markowski. But we are the most liberal people in terms of letting our fighters take opportunities. And if we have to go to another platform to do it for that opportunity, so be it. Mm-hmm. So you've got to look, sometimes you've got to look in the mirror at certain individuals' arrogance as to why these fights don't take place. And Munguia Charlo is a fight that should take place. I've got nothing to do with it. Right. It's only my opinion as a you know, a bench sitter on this one. But it frustrates me because, by the way, Jaime Munguia's resume is awful in the last 4 or 5 fights. Awful.
Can we get Kambosos Haney in the ring? Is that going to happen? Is it fading?
You always ask me for, my little snippets or whatever they're going to be, and
Yes.
I'm not going to get myself into trouble here because I have no confirmation for you that this fight is happening. I'm just going to tell you
what?
that I believe this fight is going to get closed. I think obviously the Ukraine situation with Lomachenko kind of rules him out of the mix as well here. The talks have been very positive between DAZN and Matchroom and Haney, and DAZN and Lou DiBella. Obviously, he's Kambosos, he's the A side of this fight. I just feel that we can close this fight, and it's a must make. The undisputed lightweight world championship in a stadium in Australia. Give George Kambosos his day, but give Devin Haney, who I believe is one of the biggest emerging stars in the sport, his opportunity to become undisputed champion.
And
If George wins, we can run it back in America. Not a problem.
Eddie, before you go, I'd like to know about Kamaru Usman. He's still talking about a Canelo fight. Is that even something that Canelo is interested in?
He'll have a contract with UFC, but if Dana White wants to do it, love to discuss it. Look, I don't see how Usman would have any shot at all against Canelo Alvarez.
No.
But therefore, why not? The thing I say about Canelo is, even when you mention Jake Paul to him, he doesn't belittle these fights. He says, look, I know what I want to do at the moment, but listen, never say never. So you got pound for pound number 1 in boxing against pound for pound number 1 in UFC.
A lot of money. A lot of money.
Money makes the world go around.
That's right. Yes, all right, Eddie, man. Thank you as always, man. Chop it up to you next week. Cheers.
Take care, guys.
Okay, Ak, we got a break in what seems to be a 10-year case of Puerto Rico's own Macho Camacho, one of my favorite fighters growing up as a little kid. He was killed, back in 2012, sitting in the car with a friend of his. One shot, him and his friend died. He died a few days later, Macho Camacho. So now they arrested 5 guys. Supposedly there were 7 guys involved. 2 guys already died. 3 of the guys were already in prison on federal charges. 1 was roaming around in Puerto Rico and 1 was locked up in Puerto Rico. So I don't know. Camacho's mother's still alive. She gave a fist to say that, there's some justice. I just hope that justice is served in this case.
Yeah, no question about it, Braga. And for those that watched the documentary, it was a very powerful documentary about Hector Camacho's case and the pain that his mother had been going through all of these years, fighting with different lawyers, trying to find justice for her son's homicide. And I'm happy for her, that she has some sort of closure if this indeed, if these are the guys that were involved in this death. Legendary fighter, definitely one of the the reason why my brother and I started fighting was he was so exciting to watch once my father, played some footage of Hector Camacho. I can't say enough about the guy, man. He had his issues and battles with drugs and alcohol and so on and so forth. But inside that ring, he was one of the most charismatic, colorful, and exciting fighters to watch, throughout his whole career. So I'm glad there's some justice for the Camacho family.
Amen. And that was some good news on a bad situation. Now, sorry, but here's some bad news, but we have to talk about it before we get out of here. Let's just take a moment now to remember late hero Tito, who was a 35-year-old Indonesian boxer who had passed away after falling into a coma on February 27 after being knocked out in a bout that he only accepted to raise money for his dream house for him and his family. This is a sport that we don't play. You don't play this sport. Everybody who goes in the ring, no matter how cliche it may sound, it is legitimate. They put their lives on the line, and this is why I respect every fighter. So blessings to the family of hero Tito.
Yeah, no doubt. Very sad news, and indeed, I echo that, Barack. This is why we give fighters so much respect when a lot of fight fans may be lacking that. So here's an example why you shouldn't. And that's our show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace and love. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow.